Welcome everyone. My name is Natalie and we're here to talk to one of our contributors from the book Surviving My First Year of Child Loss, and I'm here today talking to Megan. Welcome, Megan.
Hi, Natalie.
Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
So first of all, let's start with you sharing your story of loss so that those people who might not have yet read the book get an idea of what's your background.
Okay. I'm the mum of 5 boys. So I have a 24-year-old son, and then we experienced the loss of 4 of our sons, extreme prematurity. So 3 of them were stillborn and 1 died neonatally. So, and they were all born between sort of 20 and 23 weeks. So just on that border of viability.
Yeah. So it's been about a year since we published the book Surviving My First Year, which was in October. So it would be about a year since your piece has been chosen for the book. Tell us a little bit, what has happened since then for you?
Since then, so when I was writing the piece, I was studying for my master's in writing and literature. So that's my background. I've always been writing, journaling, and studying English. And since that time, I've actually started writing my thesis. So I'm writing my thesis about pregnancies and the different changes that have happened generationally.
So what do you think has happened as a result of writing for the book? Or, I mean, in your case, we spoke a little bit about pre-interview, about your realizations that you had from your journals and doing your studies and writing your story. So tell people a little bit what you've noticed in doing that.
I suppose the thing that's come out of writing the essay and having it published in the book is that whilst I've always been happy to tell my story, doing things like these Skype interviews, and I was interviewed on the radio locally about the book, they're things that I probably wouldn't have done. And whilst I was happy to speak, it would be more in a informal setting, you know, with a group of parents who've experienced bereavement, but not on that sort of more public scale. So I think that's probably been a benefit to me, to be able to branch out and speak to more people about my experience of loss.
Yeah. What do you feel has happened in you, and maybe also in a different way, talking about it and being open about your situation, your losses? What has happened for you and also for the other people that you spoke to?
For me, I think it's just a realisation that my story is important, that it's unique. Everybody who's experienced a loss, no matter if it's the same sort of experience, their experience is different. No two experiences are the same. Okay. So in sharing, I suppose if there's one person that gains benefit from me telling my story, then it's beneficial.
Yeah. And we spoke about that before, that you shared with me that both your mother and your grandmother had losses as well, and you sort of compared the differences in their experience and in your experience. And I guess part of that change happens because we're talking about it and we're sharing our view. Would you agree to that? And tell us a little bit more about those stories.
So that's what I'm looking at in my thesis. I'm looking at my personal experience, but how that is impacted by the experience of my mother and my grandmother. So those losses occurred in the 1950s and the 1970s, and there's been quite a shift in how we deal with grief and how we deal with the death of a child. So, and I suppose my experience with my mum, I can see now with the research I've done and the reading I've done, I've got a better understanding of why she perhaps was a bit distant when I experienced my loss. And I can understand, probably brought up memories for her. But that's why we need to tell our stories, is so that people know they're not alone.
So take us a bit deeper. You mentioned she was distant when you had your losses, and you said that with the research that you've done, you realized the reasons why. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so I think culturally and socially in the 1970s it was very taboo. We didn't talk about pregnancy loss. It was sort of swept under the carpet. We just, it's happened, just go home, try and have another baby. There probably wasn't the research that's being done into it now. And whilst there's a lot more research these days, there's still a long way to go.
Yeah.
So, with respect to how we handle grief, but also into why some people experience pregnancy loss, and what preventions there can be.
Mm. You said to me your grandmother actually had a stillbirth. Did I remember that correctly?
Yeah. So in 1949, her second child was stillborn.
Mm-hmm. And do you remember from your mother? Was she able to remember that? Did she tell you about your grandmother's situation?
So my mum was the third child. So this was after my mum was born after her sister that died, and I don't have a lot of recollection about when I was told. I've spoken to my cousins about it as well. We all know the family history, but it wasn't really talked about. So I'm not really sure, and I actually write about that in my work, that whilst we know about it, we're not. It's family history, but it's not something that is discussed, or it's not as open as we speak about our losses.
Yeah. I mean, I guess also from what you were sharing with your mother's reaction when you had your losses, I mean, it's understandable that we get grief passed down to us by what we see and what we experience, not just our parents, but even the wider circle of how people react to grief. And that's how we assume that's how it's done. Either we oppose to it or we take it on. And I guess, at least to my understanding, is by changing the story, the script around that, the narrative, by us telling how it is, how it truly is for us, and for each one it is different, we can then hopefully change the way people are met with that.
Yeah, definitely.
You were specifically interested in that sense that you took journaling as something that you did over years. Tell us a little bit, for those people who might consider journaling or writing or automatic writing for maybe the Maybe You'll Heal event, or in general for their healing. What would you recommend for people in regards to journaling?
I think, and I put it in, I wrote it in the essay, because people think, oh, well, I can't do that. I can't journal. But everybody writes lists. They write shopping lists. They, write notes for family, or, leave it on the fridge. Or write notes for colleagues. So we are writing all the time. I suppose for me, my journals are a record of that period of time for me. And I don't write for anybody else at that time. I'm writing the experience or how I feel. It has had the added bonus, because I have kept those journals all these years, that now in my research I can go back to them and I can actually use that in my research, which is probably not for everybody. But it's an opportunity. The benefits from it is you can go back and you can actually see how far you've come.
Exactly. Yeah. And I guess what I notice is, when similar to the Maybe You'll Heal, the creative healing event, is people often struggle because of their expectations. You have a picture of the best outcome, or whatever you might like to create, or how a journal should be, or when you reread it, how it should sound. And I guess a lot of it has to do with expectation that it's not good enough, or not the way that perfect reality should look like, but actually, well, reality is different than what it is. Is there anything? Yeah, sorry, you wanted to say something.
I think with that, I suppose it's not having any expectations on yourself. And it's not writing for an audience. My journals, I have shared them with family members, my husband, friends, counsellors, but generally that's to say, look, I can't tell you this, but here, read what I've written. But in the main, I don't write for an audience when I journal. I'm writing for me.
Yeah. And I think you just gave me the keyword. Whatever we're doing in terms of our healing is not an artwork or necessarily an outlet for anyone else. It's for us. And if we're wanting to share that, then that's something else. But basically, it's doing something for ourselves.
That's right.
Is there anything, looking back, that you would have done differently, or done not at all, or would have loved to do more of, looking at your healing journey?
I'm glad that I've kept the journals, now looking back at them. I wish that I had written more, particularly in the first couple of experiences. I only wrote where it was the most raw experience. But post, I think it was 2002, that's when I was writing quite prolifically and wrote quite a bit. I wish that I had written more at that early stage.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean, like, it's not something necessarily to share, but I can see how much I've changed from, say, 2002 in my experience, that if I had have started that earlier, then it would have been beneficial.
And you said you would have loved to have written more. Is that because you would want to love to read it now, or see your change, or anything else?
I think just for the healing benefits of it. I've seen how beneficial it is. Obviously, in my research, I've been revisiting those journals, and that can be it can be traumatic to go back, but for the most part, it is actually quite cathartic to actually go back and say, you know what, I've come through this. This was my experience, but I'm here now.
Thank you so much, Megan, for sharing that with us. And I hope that you who are watching this, you're encouraged to, take up the pen and a journal and write about your experience, because as we know from Megan, who has long-term experience of it, it is beneficial. And those of you who want to do that in a group, there's Maybe I'll Heal coming up during the month of May, which is a free healing event, a yearly event run by the Grieving Parents Support Network. So you're welcome to join that. And we thank Megan as well. If anyone would like to read Megan's story, you can still order the book. It's Surviving My First Year of Child Loss, and it can be ordered in the shop on nataliehimmelrich.com. So thank you so much, Megan, and wishing you really a lot of success with your thesis and your studies.
Thanks, Natalie. It was lovely to talk to you.
Thank you.